Hello, welcome to academic writing. We are dealing with Unit 5 Vocabulary and Grammar in Academic Writing. In the previous class, we had already seen the important highlights of this unit, but here once again we are going to review the whole unit once. Whatever was not clear in the first session will be made clear, I hope. So, let us start with the first question. Write a brief note on the importance of revising a research paper. So, we are going to see how important is revision or editing the matter that we have written. A written work creates a permanent impression about your quality of education. Therefore, you have to be careful about every single sentence you write for an academic purpose. So, our writing reflects our education. That's why we should be very careful in our vocabulary and our style of writing. So, after writing, every formal written work needs revision and editing before its submission. So, before submitting any written work, we should go through this diligently and make all the changes or corrections that are necessary. Revision helps you to realize your mistakes, and while editing you can improve the words and sentences and remove unnecessary words and expressions to make the writing clear and effective. So, when you are going through the writing and doing the editing, we are able to realize the mistake that we have committed and make necessary changes in that, or remove words that are not needed or expressions that are outdated. We move on to the second question. What is AWL? Explain its uses. So, AWL stands for Academic Words List, and this list includes the frequently used words in academic writing, and it has got a main list and also a sub list. Learning the words in the list will enable you to understand academic text as well. So, when you go through an academic writing or text, it will help you to understand the text better once we are used to this AWL. The list includes words often used in different academic disciplines. We know there are different types of disciplines or different styles of writing, like scientific writing, research writing, or literary writing. So, all these different disciplines will require different set of vocabulary, and once you are familiarizing with this list, once you are used to this list, then it becomes easy for us to make our writing more effective and clear. Next, the third question. Give examples of word categories to be avoided in academic writing. So, as we have already seen, certain words and expressions should be avoided, and some examples are given here. In that, the first one is contracted forms. Contracted form is short forms. Usually we write like don't, can't, won't and all that. So, we can avoid them and use the full forms. Next is informal verbs or verbal phrases like gone, put off, get, keep, start, give, show and so on. So, these verbs or verbal phrases can be replaced with continue, postpone, preserve, commence, provide, exhibit or such words which are standard. Then we have slangs. Actually, slangs are also a colloquial expression, like dude, cool, guy, cop, chap, lad, loo. This kind of slangs may not be understood by everybody. So, it is better that we avoid these slangs, because they may be from a particular region or place. It does not have a universal application. Next, we have common abbreviations we use in our everyday conversation. Certain short forms like TV, OK, ASAP. So, these can be replaced with the full forms. Next, cliched expressions. Cliched means overused. You know that some usages become rather boring, because we hear it very often, almost every day. So, such expressions can be avoided. Examples are: at the end of the day, last but not the least, time will tell, such kind of expressions. Next, we have ethnic slurs and racist expressions. Ethnic slur means we give certain names to some people because they come from a particular region or a particular place. We call them a particular names, like Paki. So, a person from Pakistan, we call them Paki. Yankee, Americans. Negroes, the black, and then Madrasis, people from Madras. If you go to the north, for them all the South Indians are Madrasis. So, these kind of words are actually offensive. So, we need to avoid such expressions. Next, we have personal pronouns like I, we, us, you, your, me. Such kind of expressions can be avoided because they express your personal feelings or personal views for which there is no relevance in your academic writing. Next, we have redundant phrases. Redundant means repeating. When you have two words which are more or less similar in meaning, like absolutely essential, each and every, actual facts, advance warning, or repeat again, another classical error that we make. So, this kind of redundancy can be avoided. We come to the fourth question, that is differentiate between formal and informal discourse markers. We know what are discourse markers. They are actually linking words to connect two sentences, two ideas, and all that. So, we have got two types of discourse markers. They are informal and formal discourse markers. We know that informal ones are the ones we use in our ordinary writing or speaking. So, we can avoid such informal discourse markers like actually, let me see, I think, I suppose, as I was saying, that is to say, more or less. This kind of linking words are actually informal ones. And coming to the formal discourse markers, which we need to use in our academic writing. They are as a result, however, in other words, therefore, to begin with, for instance, on the contrary, etc. So, this kind of formal discourse markers are the ones we need to use in our academic writing. We come to the fifth question, illustrate the use of discourse markers in a paragraph. So, here we are going to see the functions of discourse markers. How are we going to use and what are the uses of discourse markers? So, first one is sequencing ideas. So, we put the order or we put our ideas in order, like 1, 2, 3, like that. So we say firstly, secondly, like that. So such kind of words are used for sequencing. Then balancing contrasting points. Suppose you are trying to give a different view from what you have been seeing, then you can say on the contrary, in spite of that. Such kind of words can be used for balancing contrasting points. Then introducing a new idea. So we are starting with a new idea, then we can use these discourse markers. Then presenting a counter argument. So you are giving a kind of counter or opposing argument. Then adding, persuading. Persuading means you are trying to force another person to see your point of view. Maybe you are trying to convince that person. Then structuring, again kind of ordering. Then generalizing. Then changing of subject, from one subject to another subject you are shifting. Then giving examples. So you can say for example or similarly. Then next point, I would like to make a change here. In my first video it was written as classifying. I regret to tell you that there is a correction. Actually it is clarifying points. Please make note of that change. So it is clarifying. Clarifying means making things clear. And then lastly we have summing up or concluding. So these are some of the functions or uses of discourse markers. Sixth question is differentiate between independent and dependent clauses with examples. So we know what is a clause. A clause is a group of words. Usually it has a subject and verb and all that, but it is incomplete. But an independent clause, it is a group of words that can stand alone and it has got an independent thought. That is called independent clause. Whereas the dependent clause, usually it is incomplete and it depends on another clause, which is the main clause. So a dependent clause cannot stand alone. It is always depending on the main clause. And this dependent clause is also known as subordinate clause. So in the example, if you see, when I was at school, I was very hard working. So you find the independent clause is the second one. I was hard working, because that is standing alone, it has a complete idea. Whereas when I was at school, that is incomplete. That's why it is called a subordinate clause. Seventh question. Explain the composition of simple, compound and complex sentences. So here we are going to see different types of sentences. Coming to the first one, simple sentence, it contains only one independent clause. And another important point to note is usually a simple sentence has only one verb. As you can see in the example, Kishore works in Infosys. So that is a simple sentence. It contains one subject, one verb. And then coming to the compound sentence. Compound means two sentences are linked or joined together. And so these two sentences are actually independent sentences, but we are joining them with maybe and or but. You can see in the example, Smita sang melodiously and her husband appreciated her. So the first one is Smita sang melodiously, that is an independent clause, and her husband appreciated her, that is also an independent clause. So both these independent clauses are joined together by and. Then complex sentence. A complex sentence, again we have got one independent clause or one or more dependent clauses connected to it. If you see the example, when the police arrived, the house was empty. So here we have got an independent clause, that is the main clause, the house was empty, whereas when the police arrived is the dependent clause, it cannot stand alone. Then what is compound complex sentence? So a compound complex sentence means it will have two independent clauses, maybe one or two or one or more dependent clauses. Let us see the example here. I was at the airport waiting for the flight to Dubai and I got an opportunity to see Shah Rukh Khan. So here we have got three clauses. First one is I was at the airport. Waiting for the flight to Dubai is again a dependent clause. And the last one, I got an opportunity to see Shah Rukh Khan, again another independent clause. So we have got two independent clauses and one dependent. Eighth question, give examples of sentence fragments. As we have seen, a fragment is a piece, rather incomplete sentence. Some of the examples are given here. Towards the end of March, because of the rain, since the students were talking, he did not go to school, he had a headache. So it appears like two independent sentences, but they are actually fragments. Why they are fragments? Because you can easily join them together. Like, as he had a headache, he did not go to school. But if you separate these two, they look like choppy sentences, they are too short. That's why we need to join them together. That looks a better sentence when they are joined together. Now coming to question number 9. Explain the basic rules of subject verb agreement. So we know that subject verb agreement is one of the most important rules in grammar, where we can make mistakes. So the rule is that the verb has to agree with the subject in number. That is, if the subject is singular, the verb has to be singular, and if the subject is plural, the verb has to agree with that. Now in a simple sentence, things can go rather smoothly, we can manage it, but in complicated sentences where we have two types of subjects, maybe one subject is or one noun is singular whereas the other noun is plural, then we don't know which subject has to agree with the verb. Now let us see one example, you will see later. So a compound sentence or rather compound subjects coming together, like neither or nor, with two subjects or two nouns, like neither my mother nor her friends know the secret. So we have got two subjects, one is mother and the second one is friends. So mother is singular and friends is plural. Now if you look at the verb know, you find that the verb know has to agree with the closest subject, that is friends, which is plural. That's why we use know rather than knows. Then coming to indefinite pronouns, like anybody, somebody, something or nobody. So usually all these pronouns are singular, like anybody is free, somebody is sleeping there, something is happening, nobody is there. So, they are usually singular. Then another area where we can get confused is collective nouns. But usually if you look at the beginning of this, it all starts with a bunch of roses, a fleet of ships, a pack of cards. So, when it is starting with a, it means it is singular, not plural, though it appears like plural. Then we have inverted subjects. Inverted subject, usually you find the subject coming first and then verb comes. But in inverted subjects like question, we find the verb coming followed by subject. Like, how are the students responding to the news? So, the subject is students and that is coming after are. So, are has to agree with the students, which is plural, that is why students are. Then we have phrases and clauses that come in between subject and verb. If you look at the example, the angry customer from North India has kept us on tender hooks. So, you have a phrase here, from North India, which is coming in between the subject and verb. So, the angry customer has kept us on tender hooks. So, that is sentence. So, customer is the subject which has to agree with the has. So, if a customer is singular, so now we come to the 10th question. Write a narrative passage using a consistent tense. So, we have got a paragraph which uses simple past tense. Sam boarded the bus at 6 in the evening. As the bus crossed the city, his mind became turbulent and anxious for no specific reason. Probably the darkness enfolding the land on either side of the road instilled a sense of security in him. He started thinking of the occasions he made trips like this one. Half the bus was empty and the seat next to him was vacant. Now, if you look at all the verbs used there, you can come to know they are all in the simple past tense. So, here we see it is a consistent tense. We do not mix up different types of sentences, they are all same tense. Now, we come to question number 11. Write a paragraph on the importance of parallelism with the suitable illustrations. So, what is parallelism? That is defined here. It is the use of components in a sentence that are grammatically the same or similar in their construction, sound and expression. So, when we are using a set of words in a sentence, you should see that they are all belonging to the same grammatical category. Like if you are using verbs, they all should be verbs. If they are adjective, they all should be adjectives. You cannot mix up verbs and adjectives together. So, that is actually what is known as parallelism. Now, when we use parallelism, you find there is a kind of repetition, because words are repeated, not the same words, but still similar sounding words, and that has a kind of rhythm to the writing. So, because of the repetition, the idea is conveyed deeply and properly, and also it adds to the flow of the text. For example, The poem is lyrical, long, interesting and meaningful. So, all those words lyrical, long, interesting and meaningful, they all belong to the same grammatical category, that is adjectives. And it will also improve the readability of your work and help you to achieve greater clarity. Now, we come to question number 12. Give examples for wordy sentences and their revised versions. So, wordy sentences are actually too many words we use. Maybe you can shorten them. That is what we are going to see here. The coat that Anita wore for the party was blue in color, and that can be modified into Anita wore a blue coat for the party. So, that sentence looks simple. Next, honestly speaking, I do not like to work when the sun is blazing. We can easily express that in I do not like to work in the hot sun. Next, to tell the truth, my neighbor is someone who drinks in excess. You can put it in simple sentence like my neighbor drinks a lot. So, this is how we change wordy sentences or revise these wordy sentences into rather short sentences. Now, we come to the 13th question. Explain the ways to eliminate wordiness in writing. Now, you will see the various ways in which we can avoid wordiness or excessive use of words. First, we can eliminate wordiness while revising and editing your work. It is better to make another person read your work to trace out the errors. In order to improve the quality of your work, use the language of your discipline. So, before going into the editing, we can consult somebody else, your friends, someone who can help you, so that you can improve the quality of your writing. So, the first point that we need to note is replace stock phrases with one word equivalents. So, there are certain ordinary phrases we can avoid, like is aware of the fact that is a long phrase. We can use or replace that phrase with the word know or knows. Second is to avoid redundant expressions like meet together, advance reservation, usual custom, return back, repeat again. So, these kind of expressions can be avoided. We need to use only just one word like meet enough, or reserve, usual, return or repeat. The rest can be avoided. And then certain faulty sentence construction starting with it or there is. So, sometimes we start a sentence with it is very essential to follow, or there is an urgent need to do something. So, that such kind of sentence can be avoided. Fourth one is avoid weak and wordy verbs. That means sometimes again we use so many words to express something very simple. For example, come to a conclusion, we can use conclude. Make a decision, we can use decide. Then fifth one is reduce the use of that, which, whom. Usually in complex sentences you find this kind of relative pronouns coming. So, they can be avoided wherever possible, like in the example, there is a boy whom I met yesterday. So, you can easily avoid that. The sentence is good when you say that is the boy I met yesterday. Sixth one is eliminate unnecessary qualifiers and intensifiers like very, quiet, just, etc. So, this kind of qualifiers or intensifiers can be avoided or eliminated. Seventh, simplify your sentence structures, again trying to shorten. Example, it is unknown whether the medicine is effective. Instead of that, we can write the medicine's effectiveness is unknown. So, the meaning is very clear and it uses only less words. Now, we come to the final question 14. Write an essay on the ways to edit and revise words, sentences and paragraphs. Actually, it is a kind of summary which includes all the main points in this unit 5. So, all these are points which are essential, which we need to mind whenever we are editing or revising our writing. First one is remove unnecessary words and expressions like conversational style, slangs, short forms, cliched expressions, racist expressions, etc., which we have already seen. I do not think I need to explain all that once again. Use different types of sentences like simple, compound, complex and all that. Then maintain the tense, try to maintain the same tense throughout your writing rather than going from one tense to the other. If you are using present tense, continue with that. Then use parallelism, again using of similar grammatical categories like all verbs or all adjectives in the same sentence. Next, remove weak phrases and use strong verbs. So, these are some of the points we need to keep in mind while editing words or sentences. Now, we come to paragraph. How are we going to deal with paragraph? How should our paragraph look like? First of all, we have the introductory paragraph which contains the thesis statements. That means we give a clear idea about what our writing is about. The subject matter or the topic of the writing should be mentioned in the introductory paragraph. Now, we come to the body paragraph. So, these paragraphs should develop the idea contained in the thesis statement. So, once you give an introduction stating your topic or subject, then the body paragraph should slowly develop the same idea logically. Then use appropriate transitional words and phrases, actually they are discourse markers to link your ideas or to sequence your ideas and all that. Now, we come to the concluding paragraph which should sum up all the main points that you have mentioned in your writing. So, with that we come to the end of today's class. Thank you.